All right, welcome back. My name is Rush Lalavivan. I am professional game master, award-winning game master, and director of tabletop panels. Here with my friends, I will let them introduce themselves.
I am Abby. I am a volunteer with Dragon Con and run a few games on the side. And yeah.
Oh, hi, I'm Bendy. I am the founder of Obsidian Brews, a black tabletop experience, hopefully coming to a con near you. We will be at Dragon Con, which is exciting. And I'm a gamer, tabletop player. I also work with Channel Federator in the YouTube space.
Okay, wonderful. So today's video is a little bit different from what we've been doing. We've been slowly building up game master knowledge and foundational knowledge, but today we're going to be talking about something a little different because the gaming space has become really dramatic recently. More dramatic than I remember in recent memory.
Game of Thrones music starts playing anytime I think about it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I've been doing this for a long time, and so of course things happen faster now in the age of the internet. But still, there's just a lot that's been going on, both good and bad, and also sideways. So we'll start on a fun topic real quick. We'll talk about the D&D movie. And then we'll talk about the Creator Summit, which many people out there probably know about. But we're going to try to unpack that as well. Like, there's been a lot of commentary on it, but I would personally like to kind of look at what this means, right? And then finally, of course, the D&D virtual tabletop, and then what the future holds for the community. So, real quick, let's just get a quick reaction. Did you like the D&D movie? Yes or no?
Absolutely. I loved it. It was so enjoyable.
So we got one yes and one Okay.
Yeah, I did. When you look at it as if it's an unhinged campaign just being translated onto screen, it's perfect. Is absolutely perfect. Is it the start of the D&D cinematic universe? No. And some people were like, are they trying to do that or are they not? And it was like an in between, but like honestly, as a campaign, could work.
Okay, gotcha. I enjoyed it quite a bit, especially because, see, from my old timers perspective, I've seen how this goes usually, and usually it goes really badly. I mean, I remember way back in the 90s, Vampire the Masquerade became a huge hit, like a runaway hit. No one had ever seen anything like that. And they, to the point that they made a TV show, Kindred the Embraced. And it was made with Aaron Sorkin. I mean, the guy who did 90210 and Charlie's Angels and stuff like that. But it was a horrible TV show.
I was gonna say, what a shift for him.
Right, exactly.
90210, Vampire the Masquerade.
That's right. And then
everyone's got their niche. Maybe he should have stayed in his.
Yeah, maybe.
And then I paid money to sit in the theater and watch the D&D movie, the first one.
Yeah. I didn't pay money, but a parent did.
So after those experiences, I was like, if the movie is coherent and I can follow it and I don't have to constantly turn my brain off, then pretty good. And so because of that, it far exceeded my possible expectations. Like there were a lot of positive surprises. Like if you know anything about For the Forgotten Realms, did I expect to see that many references to that little bit of lore? No, did not expect that at all. So because of that, I was very pleased. So Bendy, tell me about the issues you had with the movie.
I wouldn't necessarily say that they were issues. I think it was just this glaring reality that this movie was really focused on making money and pushing Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast into like that MCU, like, oh, this will generate money and we can make merchandise and that merchandise will make more games. And like, so they're trying to like do this capitalistic funnel and it kind of showed through in the more like Hollywood-esque moments. So it's like, I didn't hate it. I'm not gung-ho all love it. I mean, I really could have done without Chris Pine as the main character. Like, I honestly was there the entire time for Michelle Rodriguez and just loved every moment of her on screen. And I was like, yes, like finally, like it was a good role for her. And she was able to be soft, but still hard. Um, and you know, all the other characters were very good. But again, it was that like, this is a campaign, like this is a cool standalone, like probably taken from hours and hours of actual gameplay and translated onto screen. I mean, for my theater, the Sending Stones got the biggest laugh out of anything else in the movie. And it was really interesting to see that moment. It's like, huh, okay. Like, this is what we love the most, you know? So I don't know. My partner had an incredible time, and I love that for him. Everyone else that I was having joy in the theater, it brought me joy seeing everybody else have joy. There's just like parts where I'm like, no, this isn't for me. Like, this was not made with me in mind.
I'm honestly with you on Chris Pine, and like I love Chris Pine because my introduction to him was Princess Diaries 2. I mean, who wouldn't love him from that movie?
Okay.
And so I was like, D&D, Chris Pine, let's go. And I was like, he is the least interesting thing about this movie. Like, his story is great, but him as the actor, I was like, I could have gone with somebody else, to be perfectly honest.
I was taking notes on it, and I was like, he's that like absent, emotionally unavailable dad. It's like, cool. But it's cool because it's like, you can see, like, in my mind, I'm like, there are people sitting at a table bringing these characters and their backstories to life, and that translated on screen. It's like, for someone who loves being at the table with friends or like new people that I just met, and the things that they bring into their characters. I mean, a lot of times when I'm playing a character, I use my own personal history and traumas and such, and translate it in a way where I can like play out cool scenes and such, and things that like mean something to me. Like, I always say, like, I play tieflings with devil daddy issues. I also have dad issues. So it's like, you know, I can see, like, you know, the main character, the bard, has issues being a good dad. The barbarian has a hard time emoting sometimes, you know, things like that. The magic users are kind of not so sure of themselves, you know, and it's, I don't know, I like it. It brought the spirit of tabletop to the movie. It just is like, I expected. It met my expectations when it came to the Hollywood stuff. I was like, okay, yeah.
What's like one little bit of spice or sauce that would have made it better? One little thing.
Less Chris Pine. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We were so focused on him as the main character, and I was like,
so maybe a more ensemble kind of thing.
Yeah, more of an ensemble. Like, it was very hard whenever we were like trying to get into the side quests that mattered to the other characters. You could get lost in it. Whereas like they really focused on like, oh, you're supposed to know who his wife was and how much he loves his wife. But yet we don't get that backstory with Olga and her having to leave her family, and then the struggles and the trauma she faced with her partner, and having to leave her partner because she couldn't get over her original trauma. Like, where was that backstory? And I know for timing reasons and all that, but it's like, if you're going to take that approach, don't just give it to the cis white male main character who like does like a couple bard things and then just whatever. Like, I could have give me more. I love the flashbacks not flashbacks. I'm sorry. The moments with Simon, like grappling with his inner problems and such, and thinking it's an ancestor, you know, spoilers, but you know, give me more of that for other people, not just the same archetype of character.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say how like Chris Pine only does a few bard things here and there, because there's so much about the D&D bard that is not present in his character.
Yeah.
You know, the spell casting, the charm, like, sure, he's a little bit roguish and he has a lute, but there's so much more to the bard class that got left out.
Right.
Which I thought was very curious.
That is a whole other thing that I think we get into, which is how Hollywood does magic. Hollywood really, really, really has a hard time doing magic. Really has a hard time. It's hard to do in any medium. Books have a hard time dealing with magic, but Hollywood especially. Hollywood really wants to make magic deus ex machina. They really want it to be that. But
which I loved Simon's. You can't fix everything with magic.
Right. Exactly. So right away, that's what I enjoyed about it. I was like, aha, they got that right, because if your magic is the Ex Machina, then it really hurts the movie
Yeah.
really badly. And they very, I thought, cleverly said, no, here are the rules. Here are the rules. And the same, you do the same thing in a horror movie or a horror story. You give the audience a set of rules and like, okay, these are the rules, and you only bend them or break them every once in a while.
R.I.P. Randy Weeks.
Right. But that's a whole other thing. Okay, so just wanted to get a feel of what you guys thought, because that was a huge thing in the community, to just understand how big a splash it was. So, for example, I run an international game with where one of the players is in England, and of course she saw it. But it was an event for people who were role playing around the world, right? It was something that where people who play D&D or role playing games around the world were paying attention, were talking about it, were connecting, or having debates about it. And so that was just an interesting moment. And the fact that they were selling D20 popcorn buckets, right? That was
I'm so upset I didn't get one. They looked fly.
I must have gone too late. I did not see that as an option.
Me too. I'm very mad I didn't get one, because now they're on eBay for over $300.
Of course they. Okay.
Right. Right.
People,
right.
Come on. I will say, I saw it. Huh?
But that tells you something in and of itself.
Yeah, it does. And we are 100%. I'm not going to get into my capitalism rant. We're talking about D&D. But I mean, I saw it at the Alamo, and I will say the Alamo really, really made the experience. Like right before the film, they were playing anything from Deerstalker Pictures to Critical Role, Ginny D. Like they had it like all in the beginning of the movie, and it really put you in that atmosphere. And then like right next to me is like a group of folks, and someone's explaining the rules of D&D, like just doing a really quick, like, here's the things you need to know before we go in, like this is this and that. And it was really sweet and cute to see like people interacting during the film and getting excited to see certain things on screen. So like as a collective, like I feel like it did bring us together. Like it wasn't our Avengers, but as a D&D lover, like it was kind of nice to have those moments.
Right. So let's move on to another topic that we're going to talk about, is what's been happening in the community, which is the Creator Summit, the Wizards of the Coast Creator Summit. So
the movie brought us together. The Creator Summit has divided us.
Exactly.
What's the script?
Exactly. So very, very briefly, if you don't know what it is, you can easily find out what happened.
Oh, yeah. Type in WOTC. Wait, right? Yeah, WOTC. Brain. I knew that. WotC. I've been hearing people call it WotC, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll take that. Type in WotC Summit, and it's just video after video after video. Like, there's so many of them. Granted, they're all kind of similar, but it's interesting to fall down that rabbit hole.
Right. And so that's one of the reasons I want to talk about it, because all of them were very similar. Like, here's what happened, here's what we think. But I would like to talk about what it means. So very briefly, Wizards of the Coast held a creator summit. They invited a bunch of influencers, some YouTube video folks, but many of them actually were just influencers, people on Twitch or on Instagram, that sort of thing. And they presented some things to them. They presented what the virtual tabletop was going to be. But then, unfortunately, things went off the rails, where the creators started asking a lot of questions. And to the Wizards' credit, they stopped everything, changed their agenda, and said, okay, you guys clearly have a lot of burning questions. We're going to let this take up the next hour and a half of our time. And they were grilled. And so many people have come out against Wizards of the Coast, because Wizards of the Coast is taking a huge PR hit right now, and said, you guys were just trying to sell us something, and you just want us to be corporate robots and go back and present things to people. And so, yeah, that is the short version. What do you guys think about what happened? And then what do you think it means? What do you think about what happened? What do you think it means?
One thing I think is really odd is the oh, you Wizards was just trying to sell us something. It's like, yes, they're a company that thrives on marketing. Of course they're trying to sell you something. I do think it's a little weird that we got mad at a company for doing what companies do.
Right.
At their most essential level.
I think people really do forget what a corporation is and the decisions that take place within a corporation, even if that corporation is run for and by, and I use that in quotations because I don't know who else at the top, by nerds. It's like they're still trying to make their quotas. Their whole focus is to make money off of us. So it's like, it just was very interesting to see how people, where they put their anger and who they directed that anger to without really stopping to think like, okay, this is just 100% a PR move. It's weird that they didn't expect influencers, especially the ones they invited, to ask questions. But again, it's somebody who's, putting the thing together and like putting out the SOPs and not knowing exactly what's actually happening in the real world around them. It happens all the time.
Right. What I thought was very interesting, and what I think it means, is that, okay, so let's start with the fact that it unfortunately was not put together the best, right? And they, it's okay if something happens. You set up a meeting. It's going to be a big PR thing. You've invited some influencers, that sort of thing. Okay, cool. But what we talked about reading the room on this video series, and it's very clear that Wizards of the Coast has done a very poor reading of the room. They don't understand where everybody is. And that is, in my opinion, that is for a variety of reasons. One, for example, they pulled back years ago from much of the large conventions. So they're not in direct touch with a lot of their fans. You can do all the marketing research in the world, but there is no replacement for actually fan engagement one-on-one. And conventions are a fantastic place to do that. Mm-hmm. At Gen Con, what is amazing, so for example, I've done some design work. Some of the design work I've done, it was for Savage Worlds, which is the little game engine that could. But I met the creator of Savage Worlds, Shane Hensley, there at Gen Con, and he gave me a job on the spot because he had read some of my other work. So at Gen Con, you can meet a lot of the directors, a lot of the creators, right there. They're Absolutely. Right there, and you can get direct engagement. A lot of people know the guy who does the Dwarven Forge miniature stuff because he's there and he makes himself personally available. So that is just one example. Another example, obviously, is their community, like with D&D, the Adventurers League, or D&D Beyond. And it's clear that someone, I don't know who, was just simply not paying attention to that information. So they didn't know the tenor of the people that were going to be coming in. And then it seems to me that they desperately want to get in touch with the audience, but they, for some reason, don't know how to do that. That's the impression that I get. And so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I think too that after the OGL debacle, they're a little bit playing defense, and so instead of getting to go in kind of more fresh and just be like, yeah, we're having this summit and we want to invite these people and we'd love to hear from you. There's that tenor of how do we fix the goodwill that we've lost? And so they have this ulterior motive in addition to mm-hmm. what the summit is broadcasted as.
Right. I don't know. I tell my creators all the time with Frederator, it's that, yes, you are the one making the content, but your audience is the one taking it in. Your audience is the one engaging in it and in absorbing that content. So it's like, if you're not paying attention to what your audience wants and how they want it and such, and balancing that with your own needs and goals, then you're going to fall completely out of touch and everything's going to break apart, in your hands. So it's like, if, Wizards and Hasbro being so out of touch with their community and being like, we really mucked this up. You know what's really going to fix it? Let's have a PR campaign about our new tabletop system and just invite everybody and give them meals and they'll be real excited about it. Give them chocolate bars. It's like, no, that's not what we wanted. And then you're surprised when they start fighting back halfway through the redundant sessions about a VTT. Like, it's not, it's someone is working in one department, not communicating with another department. And both of those departments report to another department that have no clue what's happening. So it's chaos. You can see the chaos ladder of Wizards and Hasbro, and it's just on full display now.
Thank you. That, I think you summed it up very, very well. That, I think that's exactly what's happening. You get the sense that things aren't being communicated, or things are fundamentally being misunderstood. And so, coming from that, I was going to talk about the VTT, but I think actually it might be better just to move on as to what this means for the community. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of people going to other systems. And this has happened before in the community, where towards the end of second edition, this is a long time ago. Okay. I'm going to try to make this really brief. So second edition D&D invited a lot of homebrewing and making up your own stuff. Like, if you read that book, it is totally 100% inviting you every step of the way to make up your own stuff. Because, like, for example, there's different rules for initiative. There's different rules for skills. You can play without skills, all this stuff. And so towards the end of its long lifespan, almost every single group that was playing second edition D&D, it looked completely different. And so because of that, what happened was people started trying out new systems, right? They're like, well, I've made up this for D&D. Oh, I'd like to try this. Oh, I made up this for D&D. I would love to try this. And so it looks like, because history doesn't necessarily repeat, but it often rhymes, it looks like to me that people are branching out and trying these new things in the gaming space. That is my experience. What do you guys see?
I definitely see people trying out new stuff, especially with like Paizo releasing the ORC in response to the OGL situation. I think a lot of people have more trust in Paizo than Wizards at this particular moment. So I've seen a huge uptick in people playing Pathfinder. I think a lot of people are that, new critical or new D&D because of like Critical Role or other D&D shows like it. Those shows are starting to do other systems as well. And so now they get to listen to it and learn that system. And they're like, oh, I can try that. I can play that. I enjoy them playing it. Surely I'll enjoy it too. And I think that's really where a lot of this is coming from for a bunch of people. Not everybody, of course, but a bunch. And for me, I love D&D, but I want different things out of a tabletop RPG sometimes that D&D just can't offer.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, full agreement. I think it's allowed the indie space to boom and giving people more opportunities and pathways than ever before. And it's also allowing a lot of marginalized voices to speak up and to be like actually heard and people are investing more in their works than, now that we're seeing this as like D&D is corporate. We as a society shouldn't be like, yeah, go corporate. Like, no, like invest in others. And it's drawing that out. And especially since there are these massive folks that are interested in things that is more than just Dungeons and Dragons. I've had the most fun at tables where I played Paranoia, so it's like, it's allowing people to like come under this nerd umbrella, know that it's safe to be open about what they enjoy, and then to just explore so many different options.
And I think too, you mentioned it has given marginalized people a bit more of a voice. I do think that there is something to be said for D&D having been around for like 50-ish years and still having issues with their language when it comes to race or gender. Yeah. And then other game systems are like, oh, you don't like that part of D&D? We fixed it. Yeah. We're brand new and we fixed it. And
look how simple it was.
Cannot get it together to do that.
Like I tried to run Curse of Strahd and I was like, this is really messed up. I can't, like, even with their edits, like the way that they portray the people and it's very much taking from Romani culture. They act like they're not doing it anymore, but they are, or Tomb of Annihilation, I think it was. I felt uncomfortable running that. There's a couple of them where I was like, this is weird. I don't know why we're still doing this. Why are we still here? Even in the movie, they had, I think it was an orc. I may not be remembering that part correctly, but it was like
prisoner.
the initial prisoner scene, and it's an orc, and the first thing he does is sexually harass the woman in the room, and I'm just like, can we not do this anymore?
Yeah, I was not wild about that detail.
It really upset me, and I just was like, why do we have to keep doing this? Why do we have to keep perpetuating these stereotypes and still have the cis white guy as the main character? Like, giving us because that's not for me. I don't care about that. I don't want that in my campaigns. I don't want that on my screen. So it's like being able to go other places where I'm welcomed and the things that are created in those spaces are for me. Cool, thank you, love it.
So is there anything, would you guys have any piece of advice? Like, let's say someone's like, you know what? If someone was going to take a break from D&D, where could they go? What's another game you should try? Like, everybody should try blank.
I mean, I think it depends on what people want. If you want the D&D vibes, but a little more cute, a little more streamlined in the rules, I would say Quest. If you want D&D vibes, but more like, I mean, gritty realism, yes, but like not gritty realism as in like, you know, things that are definitely going to step over lines and veils. But like, oh, you know, your armor does this, which is more realistic than armor class type of gritty realism. Dragon Age is a great system for that. If you want to do more of a, you know, 90s Monster Hunter, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer type show, powered by the apocalypse, monster of the week, like it really just depends on what people want out of their game and why they are dissatisfied with D&D.
Right. Same time, I just wanted to throw some things out there for people to look at, look at. Bendy, how about you? Do you have any advice of where people could go?
High key, literally anyone who is a person of color. Like, I know that's a blanket statement, but you know, Monty Cook Games, Into the Motherlands, I always pronounce it wrong. The Wagadu Chronicles. That's now going to be an online MMORPG. Forgive me.
I'm so excited.
I've had bad birthdays. Same, you know, things like that. Hunters Entertainment has produced things like Alice is Missing, Kids on Bikes. They just fully funded their campaign for that. There are so many other options out there. If you don't want something that's new, you can go back to other systems like Paranoia, Cyberpunk, things like that. Cyberpunk was created by Mike. Was it created by Mike Thundersmith? I don't want to misspeak there. Yep. Yes. Created by, you know, a man of color who really just wanted to bring a love of the genre. Sure, it does have its problematic elements. It's also older. That happens. We are trying to create more spaces for this. But honestly, things like D&D need to, and I know this is controversial, but we need to burn it to the ground and rise something out of the ashes that is completely different than what was created in the 1970s. Like, we're not the same people anymore. It's not the same archetypes anymore. Not everything is Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Like, we need to just stray completely away. Like, I want orcs that have, you know, hoity-toity British accents and like do accounting in the village. And let's talk about that. Like, give me something that is completely against the norm. And I know I went off on a little tangent there. Like, I know you just asked me for games, but like, that's why I'm saying, like, invest in those creators who are like, nah, I'm good with that.
And I'd also say, like, to the Lord of the Rings point, D&D is kind of trying to have its cake and eat it too, right? Because it's trying to preserve the Lord of the Rings inspiration that helped create it, right, but also has changed so much from first to now fifth or whatever the new edition is going to actually be called, to the point where it's like, this isn't really Lord of the Rings anymore.
No.
So I feel like there needs to be two separate systems for what D&D wants its inspiration to have been for that Lord of the Rings feel, and then for what it has been trying to become for the past 20-ish years.
Like, let it go. Stop normalizing these things. I mean, I really didn't need the scene in the movie where they were doing slave labor. I just get rid of it. Stop that being a theme in these fantasy worlds. I don't like it. I don't, you know, and there's more people like me who look like me who don't like it either, you know, and we have these issues across the TTRPG sphere because we're no longer, I don't even think we've ever been a community, to be honest. Like, I don't feel welcomed at a lot of tables. So no, I don't see it as a community. This is why I push for going to indie things and things made by POCs, because I feel safe in those environments. You know, D&D is not actively making environments safe. They're putting band-aids over old issues. And they're like, well, you know, we'll fix this. But we really got to make our money. So
wait, oh my gosh, there was just so much there.
sorry.
No, it's okay. There's just so much there, and I'm like, I can't write it down because like otherwise I'm not going to be like making eye contact. Okay, gosh, all right. So this is like that was like there's so much there. Okay, so you don't think that the gaming space is a community, or what is not a community?
The tabletop, anything like D&D, I truly have never fully felt welcome in the D&D community. I mean, there's an entire, I don't know if anybody knows this, but there's an entire list on some RPG discussion site that is have red coded woke companies and literally marking against companies for standing up for marginalized voices. And it's just like there's a lot of things that are being brought into the tabletop world that is separating us and polarizing us. And it's like, I even said before this, I was like, I just want to fight monsters, not each other. Like, and that's why I don't feel safe, because people are bringing these ideals and things into the community. I think a couple of years ago, and this is what, Wizards of the Coast is saying is part of the point for them changing their OGL is, I think it's called Star Frontiers. Have either of you heard of this?
Mm-hmm.
It's tickling a memory in my brain, but it's also been a minute since I've read it. So
Star Frontiers was an original product. I guess I don't know. Sometimes words escape me. Original product done by Gary Gygax, and more recently, people are utilizing. And the new Genesis rules are both very racist and bigoted and anti-Semitic, and they blatantly say that, like, oh, you get better stats because of your race, and that's something that is kind of veiled, but still within D&D, and it's hard. Again, it's hard to talk about these things. I feel nervous talking about these things, and it turns me off to the community aspect, because if this isn't going on in my community, I want no part of it.
So, gosh, all right. So what is so fascinating about everything you just said is that going way back to like the 70s, there has been a D&D community, but I think what you said before is totally right. And this is like, there's lightning bolts going off in my head. What is happening with not just US society, but global society is also happening in microcosm in the D&D world, and the role-playing world. Because for the longest time, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. There are some old school gamers that I'm very good friends with. They're wonderful people. They're both women. And that's how they identify. And they were talking about how there wasn't a lot of women or girls playing D&D. I'm like, well, wait a minute, whoa. My eldest son got dragged into the D&D club because of all the cute girls there. His friend was like, no, you got to go to the D&D club. That's where all the girls are. They were like, what? Their mouths like hit the floor. They're like, one of them was like, I remember I would go to a big convention and there were hundreds of people there and I was the only woman there. And I'm like, no. It's totally not like that now. Like, yeah, my son is going to the D&D club to try to pick up girls. So that's what's going on now. It's a very different experience. So I think what I'm hearing you say, Bendy, is that the community has really evolved. And what I hear, and you guys correct me, is it's splintering. There's 100%. I have seen groups of D&D guys. And I have to shake my head because these
Can you play our cleric?
The deep sigh is enough.
like the, oh my gosh, they're like, they've red flag woke companies, and like Wizards of the Coast is too woke and Paizo is too woke. So these are the games
Gen is too woke.
Right. And then so we're gonna play these games, and I'm like, I know those creators that made those games, and they're like some of the wokest people you've ever met. So I was just like, what is going on? So and I'm also embarrassed because a lot of those old school people that are like that are definitely my friends. I've known them from way back. But at the same time, I meet people who want something different, who are making their role-playing space something different. And the reason it matters so much is because you are engaging with your imagination and your creativity. So those are really sensitive spaces, right? It's not like, I mean, if I go, let me give you another example. In my home state, South Carolina, there are two teams, South Carolina and Clemson, that hate each other. But once the game is over, people kind of calm down, except for the super fanatics. This is a little different. There's no like, oh, we won and you lost, and next year. No, this is like there's like a push and pull in wrestling, and so that is really interesting. Just to understand and unpack that what is going on in the gaming space is reflective of the world.
To bring that game analogy back to tabletops is when you make the game your entire personality and identity, the game never ends.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Just like folks who love sports ball, it's you just get so invested in it. And us as a society, and I'm sorry if you had more that you were going to say.
No, that was it. Keep going.
We are so desperate to cling to something and to belong to something, and it's creating these like cult-like atmospheres within certain communities. And it's like, I don't know. I think it speaks on the fact that for the last however many years that at least in the last recent few years, we've experienced a trauma that has been isolating us. And we are dealing with the fallout of that isolation more so than, before the pandemic. So in the online space, people are really clinging to things they want to believe in because some people, that's all they have. Some people don't have an identity out of their little Twitter sphere handle or their little community of D&D players or tabletop players or what have you. So it's like we've got all of these people dealing with real world issues, and we're taking those real world issues and we're putting it into the game. And it's like, I kind of want to just be like, hey, are we all okay? Do we need to take a step back and address the fact that we're not okay?
I like that. I like that, the fact that, take a step back and address the fact that maybe we're not okay as a community. I think in our own homes and our own tables and that sort of thing, I think you can make it okay. So when I was growing up, to understand what D&D was like, and we're going to get ready, we're going to get super controversial, okay? Super, super, super controversial. When I was growing up, when the book Oriental Adventures came out, I loved it. Now, there's a huge thing where a number of Asian gamers have gone through, like literally page by page, and have taken it down, and this is horrible, and why this is horrible, and that sort of thing. But for me, at the time, it was wonderful. Let me explain. So back then, my two best friends in the whole world that I played D&D with were a black guy and a gay guy. So when we became adults, we made the joke that we were literally, if we walked into a bar, it would be the beginning of a joke.
Oh no!
Right. Asian guy, black guy, and gay guy all go to a bar, and then something happens, And if you want to do the anti-joke, they all had a beer and they had a good time.
They all had a beer, had a great time.
So those were my two best friends in the whole world, and the thing that we connected over was D&D, because you could be anybody, and you could do anything. You could adopt any identity. You could gender swapping or being gender fluid, totally acceptable. And we were doing those things and experimenting with those things without even realizing that we were doing that. But let me go back to that original premise. The reason Oriental Adventures was such a big deal to me was because in the 80s, in the fantasy world, Asian characters literally did not exist.
Yeah.
Right? They did not exist. Any fantasy movie that you watched, say Willow or Dragon Slayer or etc., there were no Asians. And my friend who was black, same issue. So we played white characters because we literally didn't know any better. We're like, well, those people just don't exist. So we're going to play blank, blank, blank. And so to have this suddenly evolve to where, no, these characters do exist, it changes everything. But what saved us was because we were playing a game where you could literally be anybody or do anything, or yes, be a black elf or be an Asian orc. Because we could do that and we had the ability to do that, that is what saved us.
Mhm.
We were really, really struggling in that deep southern town. I mean, my friend
Mhm.
who was gay, like, you want to talk about really serious issues. I was literally the only person of color in my school for a long time, for years. And my friend who was black, um, he was made fun of by the other black students at his school because he didn't act a certain way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so he's a black guy playing D&D in the 80s. So
Yeah.
that
Oh
that
yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean? It's so
It's
but we made our own safe place because that's what it was. So I guess anyone watching this or listening to this, I just want people to know that it is what you make it.
Mhm.
Nobody can tell you what to do or how to do it or
Mhm.
what the rules are.
And if you do not feel safe at a table, leave
Leave.
that table.
Leave.
Leave
Be
the
gone.
table.
Find some of your own. Like, and speaking to that, like, I know you said that was controversial, but like it was all you had, and also being young, and that's literally all you got to work with. It's, to me, like, of course that makes perfect sense that you would embrace that, because it's finally something that depicts somebody who looks like you, someone who you can resonate with, and it's not just the same, shades of pale. um Sorry. So I agree with that, and it's difficult because, like, even growing up for me, all my characters were white. My entire tables growing up were white. High school, I was the darkest person in my graduating class, and it's hard to advocate for a perfect tabletop world, because we're not going to have it be perfect ever. There's always going to be issues. There's always going to be something that we have to go back and fix. And then you're going to have that infighting of, like, oh, well, now it's too politically correct, or no, you're being too sensitive or too woke, or you're not being woke enough, or you're not being sensitive enough. We're always going to have that, because humans are humans at the end of the day. But what we can do is, like, when we see it, we point it out, we say, hey, let's change that now. Cool. Let's move on. You know?
So what I also hear and what I've been thinking about is that people who are advocating for more inclusion in games want more paintbrushes. That's what I keep hearing. Like, I would like to make this in my world,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't have the tools or paintbrushes or what have you to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Please create those. Am I off base with that? Is that what I'm hearing, or am I hearing something different?
No, I mean, it's like giving more tools and resources to create those worlds. If, players who were predominantly, Caucasian for a time was given all the tools under the sun to create their worlds, while marginalized people were still being considered marginalized in those worlds. It's like, let's change that. Let's continue to go back, look at what we've done, and then in the future be like, okay, let's do something that not a, like, oh, let's make sure we don't offend anybody. Not that. No, it's like, let's give people more tools so that they can exist in their spaces and feel safe in those spaces.
And I think it's interesting too, because for so much of the history of the fantasy genre, it has been Western European fantasy. And, The Witcher is more Eastern European, but it still is European fantasy. And so I think one of the paintbrushes we could get is, what does a fantasy China look like? What does a fantasy Sub-Saharan Africa look like? Like, what are those
Correct
settings?
Yeah.
And, obviously they're not, peat bogs and, oh, I'm just a lonely peasant, sir.
Right. No, like, I want to see Nubia. Give me my own fantasy version of ancient Nubia and let me exist in that world. Instead of, like, okay, I got to pigeonhole myself into this, this type of world that was geared towards more European medieval fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
No, I agree so much with that. I think that a lot of times when we have inclusion in a lot of media, sometimes there's colorblind casting, which I'm all for. That's totally great. But what is missing is the context.
Cinderella.
Right. But what is missing often is the context. with when you're a person of color, you come. The reason people of color don't want people to be colorblind is that if you're colorblind, then you're denying somebody's previous experiences. You're saying, well, you and I were exactly the same. We had the exact same experience growing up in high school. No, we did not. We did not have the same experience growing up in high school. Our experiences were radically different. Trust me. So what you need to have if you have representation is you also need to have the context. What does it mean to be blank? What does it mean? What is that person's background? Where did they come from? What are their traditions? That sort of thing.
Right.
I was like, that's a conversation that's been going on with like Disney casting a lot lately as well. Because of course we're getting Black Ariel, and then the woman they've cast as Nani in Lilo and Stitch is very, very light, and Mr. Bubbles has been changed completely. And it's like, okay, but especially in the context of Lilo and Stitch, which is in a real world setting, what does that then mean for the characters that these actors are supposed to represent?
Right.
Because for a mermaid, it doesn't matter. She's a mermaid. Like,
yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think
never thought about it in that way, but wow, that's interesting.
Someone made an argument one time that like scientifically mermaids shouldn't even like they should be translucent or something like that. Like
they shouldn't exist.
Like, well, first of all, they shouldn't exist. But also, like, Lilo and Stitch is so rooted in Hawaiian culture, and we have not done right by Hawaiian culture in the slightest. So for Disney to come out and be like, "Oh, we're going to do a live action film, and we're going to, fund all this money into it, and probably be detrimental to the natives of Hawaii," like it's a bad idea. The moment I saw it, I was like, mm-mm. Like, yeah, I love Lilo and Stitch, but as soon as I saw that they're doing it, I'm like, this isn't the way. This is not the way. Very, very
poorly thought out money grab.
Yeah. And that's but we're in the era of money grabs. Everything is a money grab. Everything, because everyone is hurting right now financially because we're not correcting all of and this is a whole different argument, but there are systemic issues in place that this is why everyone is so focused on money. And it's like, can we be focused on creativity again? I would love that.
Right. 100%.
Okay. So, man, I don't know if we answered anything. I think we just generated more questions, which is fine, which is great.
Oh, no.
But I'm really glad that we're asking new questions. I really feel like we broke new ground and asked new questions because that's where the learning comes from. Mm-hmm. So I think that's all the time that we have, actually. I hope to see everybody at DragonCon, and I'm going to leave everybody with this. Dice were rolled. Roles were roll. Let me start over.
Hang on, while you think about that, Bendy, where can we find you?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, I'm Bendy. Thank you for being here. Thanks for listening. I apologize if I got a little too animated there, but you can find me on Twitter at Bendy Dinosaurs. You can find me on Instagram at Bendy Mitchell. And I also run Obsidian Brews. We've been a little kind of quiet lately, but we're really working on, I know it's been hard. It's been a struggle these first few months, but we're looking forward to pushing through and really, bringing more to the community.
And if you want to get updates on these episodes, you can follow us at The Table Dragon on Twitter or DragonCon_tabletop on Instagram. And we will be posting whenever these go live on YouTube on those particular channels. Rush, if you would like.
Okay. Now, yes, I got it. Dice were rolled. Roles were played. Play was fun. And what else is there in life if not play? Thank you very much.